Okay, should be up and running. Hello, hello, hello. Hello, 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 hello. Receiving your content, your audience will be with you momentarily. Okay, and we're up and running. So this is a follow-up to last week's video on the Custodes Gold. So for many of us, we may not own an airbrush, and alternatively, we may not want to use an airbrush on every project. So when we do use an airbrush, it saves us time, but we don't get the specificity, we don't get the clear delineation between armor plates that we can do with, say, just using a brush alone. So when it comes to the Valdor tutorial I will be showing you, it's coming at the end of the month. As you can see, still work in progress. This will all be done with a brush because you can really focus in on several of the details. So for this demonstration, I have the shield captain I'm working on for myself. And I wanted to show you how you go about thinking about color placement, how you place the highlights on a reflective surface, and how you create interesting, dynamic, reflective, true metallic surfaces for your miniatures. So this has been detailed. This will be detailed via a PDF, also available at the end of the month. I haven't taken step by step for all of it, say the chest place. It's just a demonstration on the leg here on how to get that, how to get the specificity when it comes to this. So I can see that we have a few people watching. If you are watching, please feel free to introduce yourselves. Please say something. Please put something in the chat, just to make it feel like I'm not talking to myself in the vacuum like a crazy person. So this is a new gold recipe I've been experimenting with, and it involves some pretty familiar friends, but a new one along the range. So I'm using Victorian brass from scale 75, hull red, trusty old hull red. I'll be using Oro Imano Dwarven Gold. I'll also be using Arfin Jade, again by scale 75. Steel by, hello Frank, Steel by Model A Color. Tom, hello Tom. And have I got, yeah, got the green, got the silver. Okay, we need gold by Acrylic Metal Color. So Frank especially, contact me after this via Facebook. I got something I need to well, I need to pay you for the stuff you give me over the weekend. Right, I've sorted out the issue with the PayPal. Okay, so let's get into this. So for the base color, I'll be using Victorian brass with a smidgen of Oro Imano. I feel very manly saying that for some reason. Okay, so let's draw this in. So let's pop off the head, because for some bizarre reason I magnetized it. So let's have a look at the shoulder pad. So I got some of my Victorian brass and a smidgen of my Dwarven Gold. I'm using the Winsor & Newton No. 2 brush. Maybe worth doing the no. Let's do the let's do this shoulder pad. So very carefully blocking in the color. Now, should I leave the inside of this black, or should I do the laurel wreath black? What do you guys think? So let me know in the comment section, because I do want to break up this miniature with a bit more black. At the moment I'm thinking the inner portion here, I have the laurel wreath gold. So let me know what you guys think, and let me know what you've been working on this weekend as well. I'd love to know what you've been up to. I know Tom, you put up a post in the Patreon page asking what people are working on this weekend. It's got some good responses. Anybody painting more gold? I feel like that's all I've done this week. Just painting gold, 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 gold. It's not the most interesting of things to do, but by adding this warm base layer, it allows us to modulate the color going forward. I think black would look good. So black laurel wreath, Tom, or black on the inner core? What do you think? So you can see already the richness we're able to get. From the brass. So this exercise is aimed at developing your brush technique. And a black Imperial Eagle. Let's go with a black laurel wreath. Now that'll look odd. Let's go with gold for all of it. Or do I want to do that? Nope, let's leave it black. Let's leave it black. I can always come in later. Paint it black. If we've got time, I'll show you how to paint. How I go about painting it black as well. Okay. Black laurel. Read my mind. A black laurel and a black Imperial Eagle. I can imagine at times of war, or especially in times of civil war, that this guy would paint the laurel black rather than having it as gold. I think that might be a cool little aspect to his character. So if you're wondering how the cloak was done, again, that's detailed via photographs and will be available in the PDF at the end of the month. Okay. Got the base tone done. I'm going to hit this with a hairdryer, so apologies for the loud annoying sound. So what I'm about to show you is true across the entirety of the miniature. It doesn't change. It's exactly the same process. Oh, just noticed there that we need to start working from a good base tone and build up. So as you see, I got a touch of black just in the middle here that needs to be painted over. We can't do that. We need a good, strong, solid foundation to build the rest of the paint job on top of. So a couple of layers just to make sure it's all consistent. Do it with a hairdryer. Good. Okay. So how do we go about deciding where to place our highlights and shadows on this miniature? Where do we place the non-metallic technique on a true metallic surface? Well, it helps if you do have a strong single light source above you. Fortunately for me, I'm doing this via the camera and I can see myself on the camera. And I know exactly, well, I can see where the shadows and highlights stand. So what I'd like you to do, once you've come to this stage, have a single strong light source, pick a single direction on the miniature. In this case, I want my primary scene to be this. so I don't want to move it, and then take a photograph. Take a screen grab of this. You can see the shadow going from here and the highlight right bang up against the laurel wreath. Now if we move the position, we can see the movement of the light changes, so the light will be up here. It's just a case of deciding where we want to take our photograph from, which will give us the most pleasing looking aspect. You can see how on this metallic paint, wherever our primary light of source is, it develops from nearly pure white into a darker orangey tone. So I quite like this. So the point of light will be here. So let's develop it along those lines. So I'm holding the miniature, take a photograph, and then start painting the rest of the miniature. Paint the shadows and highlights where you see them in your picture. So let's draw this in. That's where my highlight is. Now with green, why are we using green? Anybody tell me? Let's start penciling this in, and if you can tell me, you get gold star. Okay, so first shadow. Looks weird, right? Okay. Shadow in here. Shadow there. Shadow. So I'm just blocking in the shadow as I see it. Oh. Can't focus in camera. So this isn't just true for custodians, it's true for all metallic work we will be doing. So nobody able to tell me? Nobody able to come up with an answer? Putting you on the spot there. So the reason why we use green is to desaturate the colour. So what does desaturation mean? If you have a look at the colour wheel, on the good ones you should see some kind of reference to the Munsell colour system, where all colour runs from maximum saturation on the very outer edges of the hue wheel, and then it runs from maximum saturation, so the maximum point of light, and minimum saturation, going from black to white. We can desaturate a colour in one of two ways. We could either add black or white to the mixture, or we could add a complementary colour. So in this case, it's quite a warm orangey yellow we have here. So in order to give the shadow more vibrance, or more of a deeper shadow without resorting to black, we can use a complementary tone to it, in this case green. So if you would like more details on this, there are unfortunately there are currently no teaching openings available at this time, but depending on the schedule next month I may open another slot. So if you want to get in contact with me, if you are interested in lessons, one-to-one lessons where you want to develop your colour theory a little bit more, please feel free to get in contact with me. Okay, so I need to hold this is why it's more beneficial for us to take a photograph, because when we shift it round, the colour may change or the lighting may change, but in this case I know where I held the miniature. I'm just taking in some steel It's the brightest silver color that I currently have. If you have aluminium, you can use that. Essentially, we're using a light silver. And in this way, we are constructing the highlight. Think of this stage as the scaffolding for the job. So maximum point of light there. So wherever the light hits the miniature, I'm just adding some silver. Okay, and there you go. We've constructed the basis of the job. Now that looks really unusual, right? That looks mental. We're not going to leave it like this. Don't worry. We're not going to leave it like this. I'm just taking a bit of gold and re-establishing the lighting here. We are not leaving like this. Don't worry. What we need to do now, if you remember last week how we talked about the gold wash. So we need to get our oro imano and water it right the way down. So we can use it through an airbrush or we can use it with a brush. I'm just rolling this over, dragging it from the mid-tone to the highlight. I'm overlapping the silver. Sorry, my hair's getting in the way. Not too concerned about overlapping in the mid-tones. Or overlapping the silver we just put down. As you can see, when I'm moving it around, the bit with the silver underneath looks noticeably brighter than the gold or the brass without the silver covering underneath. What's the opposite of gold? I need to paint something in the opposite of gold next month, just as like a palette cleanser. Silver maybe? Do Grey Knight Army. Okay. So that creaking sound you can hear in the background is my chair. It's quite an old chair now. I ruined it with my persistent sitting. So I'm just adding more gold to those places that I feel need it. Okay. So we have our midtones, we have our shadows, we have a little bit of the highlight constructed. What now? Hull red. Hull red to the rescue. The green colour is called Arfin Jade, Mark. Good to see you, by the way. And Daniel, nice to have you on board. Yeah, Oro y Mano is Dwarven Gold, yeah. It's the Spanish name for it. So for some reason, the ones I bought... I mean, they're a Spanish company, so I shouldn't say for some reason, just because they're Spanish. This one, unlike the other ones I bought, Victorian Brass, the Spanish is on the front and the English is on the side. But I'm not complaining, it sounds a lot better than Dwarven Gold. Oro y Mano. Sounds way cooler. Okay, let's start developing these shadows. I'm using a Winsor & Newton Series 7 Kolinsky Sable brush, number 2. I've been obsessed by number 2 brushes recently. I've been doing everything with number 2 brushes. I've been painting faces, dotting eyes, just to see if I can. So when it comes to things like cloaks, I think they're much better to use than number 1. So guys, if you are desperate to run out and buy something, try a number 2 brush. See how I knock back the green and just develop that shadow so much more than if I put down black, say. And by having a matte colour there, it locks the shadow in place, so no matter where I move it, that colour's locked in place now. So wherever I put the green, I'm just adding a glaze of the hull red. And this is the airbrush colour. For some reason, the normal acrylic paint looks slightly different to this. I much prefer using the airbrush paint. So wherever there's green, just adding a layer of this stuff over first. I'm adding a layer of this stuff over it just to establish my first shadow layer. Allow that to dry before maneuvering it ever more. See, I'm always pushing the paint to where I want it to sit. So I want the paint to sit along the shadow here. So I'm going to start my brush stroke and draw it to the point of maximum saturation. Okay, let's get these filigree. So if you have any questions, feel free to fire them over. Doesn't have to be about this, it could be anything with miniature painting. Otherwise you're going to get a lot of me just repeating the same things again and again. If you're happy just to sit and watch, that's cool as well. Okay, it's starting to look like something now. Okay, so I probably need to give it another coat with the hull red just into the shadows here. And this is establishing our shadows. This isn't our defining stage. I'm just trying to get a feeling of the shadows, and the rough shadows and highlights. Just going to run this over slightly. Okay, let's add a bit more specificity to this. Let's define these details a bit more. So for this, I'm going to take a bit of incubi darkness, or coal black. So incubi darkness is produced by Games Workshop. Really nice little colour. So let's take some incubi darkness and a touch of hull red. I'm going to create a very, very dark brown colour. I'm going to use this to define the plates of the armour a bit more. Up until this point, I've just wanted to give definition to the kind of like mid-tones. For this, I'm defining the details. I'm just using the very, very tip of my brush for this. You could even, in some of the darker shadows, say down here, just add a few points. Allow them to set, just brush them back. So I want the inside of that filigree to be quite dark to contrast with the light, bright filigree I will be painting in there. So it's so easy with a real metallic miniature to lose the details. Right, let's start highlighting this. Oh, let's have a look at the... how come you haven't added purple in the shadows? For this project, I'm just trying something different. So in previous videos or in previous methods, I've used purple in the deepest recesses. I'm just doing this to try something different. Okay. Do you usually focus on one part of the armor till the end process? That's a really good question, actually. So it's one of those habits I've been trying to knock myself out of. You'll see it with especially higher end guys. They focus on one particular element of the miniature and complete that until it's done. This way you can ensure that each particular armor plate is as high as it'll possibly go, or will have as much detail as it'll possibly go. I think that's the preferred method of competition painting, of getting a really, really good finish to the miniature. I have previously, up until this point, focused on the entirety of the miniature, especially through the airbrush. But personally, I think this is a much better way of doing it. Because it gives you a much more rounded feeling to each particular element. Okay, so Daniel asks, Do you have any issues with Scale 75 metallics splitting when you move them around your palette? Some of them, yes, especially if they've been standing for a while, left standing for a while. But I have agitators in all of my bottles of paint. Right, this splits out like you wouldn't believe. So gold. Just need a very, very tiny amount of this. Thin this down, and let's start developing the highlight back again. So I'm mixing the steel for a bit of body, because this paint is so thin. And it's quite unwieldy how thin it is. It's perfect through the airbrush. It's not really meant for regular brush painting. So it is slightly tricky. It's not a fault of the paint. It was designed like this. So I want these filigree marks almost to be in white metal. You can see the difference in tone we get in now. You can see how the deepness of the shadows. Okay, so to reintroduce some of the metallic aspects to the midtones, we need another metallic wash. So we can thin down metallics in the same way we can thin down normal acrylic paints. Only it's not so much the colour we're trying to impart to those midtones, it's the metallic sheen or metallic shine of the metallic pigment within the paint. Slightly different to how you may have learned how to paint. It's a very different method to painting gold. But like I say with all my tutorials, take what you think works, discard what you don't like, and develop your own. Develop your own thing. It's far better to learn how to paint like you rather than paint like anybody else. So I develop that to pure silver. So I'm adding more steel into the gold. What I could do here is some micro detail. Micro detail with the number 2 brush. So as you can see at the bottom here, it looks slightly unneat, slightly untidy. So I'm building up so I can use another layer of hull red just to help bring everything together. I know this is a slightly longer way of doing it, but I would recommend this for your characters only. I wouldn't recommend doing this on your rank and file. So being the masochist that I am, I am using this technique for my personal Custodes. I like to think of them as, well, how they described in the book, as singular pieces of artwork never to be repeated again. So that's how I try to treat each and every one of my custodian guard. So I paint them all up individually in this manner. Okay, hull red again. Working it into the shadows. use the very tip of my brush now to give texture to those shadows. So instead of using the brush in very slow, singular motions and movements, I'm instead using it to create a sense of depth. There you go. We have a shoulder pad. Let's show you how to do the black of the laurel. Let's see if we've got any questions. Nope, Daniel's the last one. Excellent. Okay. So I'm going to cheat a little bit here. I'm going to use black ink. I've pre-coated the miniature with white and black. You can still see some of it showing through. And you can see it's just picked up on the very top portions of the laurel. So I'm going to take some black ink, my scale 75, and I'm just going to roll this over the laurel and the imperial eagle. There's one more aspect I want to show you to the golden armor before we leave, but I do need to leave it to dry first. So stay tuned for that, for the capstone of the gold. But you can more than happily leave it like this. I mean, it's done. Okay. So I'm going to take some of our Inky Darkness and a touch of white. Where's my white? Okay. Intensity Black. Yep, that's the one. Daniel, there's the one. Are you planning a tutorial for grav tanks? Oh boy, yes I am. So I've got grav tank, I've got Telemon, I have jet bikes, the Forge World jet bikes, all filmed, ready to go. I'm unsure whether I want to release them all as one full tutorial video or whether to space them out over a couple of months. I'm really not sure at the moment. Okay, so Inky Darkness and black. Touch of white. So this is still kind of wet. So what we're going to do is just roll the brush over them for a bit of wet blending. So this is more to do with brush technique than it is anything else. It's one of these techniques that's hard to explain, so I'm just going to do it and hopefully you'll be able to break it down for yourself. Any questions, please feel free to ask, because this to me it's kind of like something that I do rather than I consciously think of. So I've loaded up my brush with Inky Darkness black, and then at the very tip I've used white. You can see why I like recording these, because I have no idea how I break that down into a PDF tutorial, what I'm doing here. Because it does rely on speed, it does rely on mixing the paints there, and it does rely on having the paint loaded up in the front of the brush. Unsurprisingly, this technique is called the loaded brush technique. Okay, so just going to let that settle for a few moments. I could come in with my paintbrush and add top highlights. So it's just slid in between the gaps of the Imperial Eagle there. No need to worry. I can correct that in a moment. Okay, white. Okay, and that's pretty much it. I do want to overlay it with a touch of purple ink and black ink again into the deepest recesses, just to give a bit of variance. You'll notice on the Valdo kit how the black isn't just a strict black. There's a slight amount of purple washed into the recesses to give a bit of life. For that I'm using Inktense Violet. Especially the release rules for 40k. Oh yeah, the grav tank. Yeah. Oh dude, yeah, you're gonna love the next few months on this Patreon. It's just a case of I don't know where to schedule them in just yet, but the footage is there. It's ready to be edited. Put them into a format. I'm thinking about doing them as a combined video and have them all done in 1 month. So the Telemon, the grav tanks, etc. Because they're all using the same techniques. But then again, I'm not sure whether people would necessarily want to tune in for all that. It would be more beneficial to have them all split up. Again, all these considerations that you don't need to think of, and that it is quite boring, frankly. All these technical things of knowing when to release them. Yeah, I don't know, but the footage is there. So, Daniel asks, and with how you've done the gold, would you then not do a oil pin wash at the end of the model since you've already really deepened the shadows? No, so the pin wash comes in to define the aspects of it. I've defined it already with the Incubi Darkness and Hull Red. The pin wash is purely there to almost give like a black lining effect, but I've done that already with the brush. Again, this is it's time consuming. And it's only something I'd consider doing with character pieces. When it comes to rank and file, even though it feels a bit odd saying rank and file when it comes to the Custodes, because everyone's so specialised. When it does come to rank and file, I would certainly use oil pin wash there. And you'll see, again, with the videos of the Telemon, the grav tank, Sagittarium Guard. Oh, that's another one I've filmed as well, Sagittarium Guard. So that will form the core of the PDF at the end of the month, as well as examples from this guy. Yeah, pin wash is definitely needed there. But on this model, no. So I've added that purple wash just to give it a bit of difference. I could come back again in any stages, just to reapply that white. These are what I call pinprick highlights. So right to the top, boom, 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 and you only want to do this a few certain points. You don't want to do this for the entirety of the miniature. Okay. There you go. That's how I go about painting the custodian gold. I've just noticed. Let's get a bit of purple. Let's add it to the whole red. Yeah, that looks good. To deepen the armor even further. Because why the hell not? Yep. And that is how I do the custodian gold on my guys. Oh, bit of an unrelated question from Tom. What paper do you use for the wet palette? So it's the grease-proof paper. No, sorry, it's the oh gosh, what's the word? Parchment paper I bought from Hobbycraft here in the UK. I find it so what you need is non-siliconized paper. That will do the trick. Don't torment me by showing Val. Okay, you want to see Valdo? Yeah, he is. So you can see when we move the miniature around, all the shadows are locked in place, but you still have that glorious sheen from the real metallic colours. God, I love this miniature. Absolutely love this miniature. And it's been filmed in full 4K, so you'll be able to see every greasy little detail of my fingernails scratching over the surface of that miniature. If there are no other questions, I will shoot off. I'll give it a few more minutes. I'm going to be messing around with this guy for a little bit longer. But if there are no questions, I will shoot off and bid you adieu. Because I got PDFs to write. Is that different from... Yes, parchment paper is different from baking paper. So baking paper doesn't allow a two-way transition of moisture, whereas parchment does. Now, there is a bit of an overlap between them because some companies label their baking parchment as baking paper. It is just a case of trial and error. If you are unsure of what to buy, you can buy this stuff called Star Wet Paper. So it's STA-wet paper through places like Amazon online. That is specifically made for this technique. Okay, do you varnish the model? I'll be giving this a very light coating of gloss varnish when I've finally finished. But other than that, no. Okay, Mark, cheers for joining in. Okay, guys, thank you all so much for joining in. That will conclude today's seminar. I hope you've enjoyed. Hope you could take something from it. If you do use any of these techniques in your own work, please feel free to post them over to it. In fact, I positively encourage it. Any feedback you want, please, again, get in contact with me either via the Patreon service or Facebook. And if you do post any work online, please feel free to, well, please leave a link to the Patreon page on any social media that you do. Drawing new people in is just essential for the growth of the channel. And it's just a cool thing to do. Thank you so much, and I will talk to you again soon.